Hey, Waterside, good day to you. We're happy that you would be joining us this day. We're talking a little bit about Lent. We're in the season of Lent, and it's an interesting concept because not everybody practices Lent in the same way. Not everybody even observes Lent. Lent is not necessarily found in the Bible, but at the same time, it's a custom that has been around for some time. We have to try to separate ourselves at least a little bit from all of the stuff that we've been dragging with us with the concept of things like Lent, and to get closer to an understanding of just what God would have us be and do in this time of 40 days of reflection. It's interesting because it's a lot of time we think God's gone away from us or we're somehow distant from Him, but we're the ones who've actually taken the trip. And Lent is a good time to draw ourselves back into an understanding of just how close we can be with God and live with Him and walk with Him and engage all kinds of situational problems that we may endure here on earth with Him by our side. It's interesting. I've been reading the book of Judges for my morning Bible studies for the last couple of days, and it's interesting that in that the Israelites were cast as people who were willing to follow God up to a point, and the judge would be elected to get them back from their errant ways, and they'd hang with the judge, and they'd hang for a while, and then the judge dies, and boom, they're gone. They're lost. They go off on their own situation. They chase after the gods of the land, the native gods. When they moved into the promised land, they never really eradicated all of the junk that was going on around them, and as a result of that, they dragged some of that junk and that idol worship with them, and that's always around. It's always able to be there, and they would always go ahead and take advantage of that. The minute, it just seemed like the minute, or maybe probably even before that, but the minute that there was some chance that the judge was no longer in a leadership position, boom, things would change. So what we end up getting a clear understanding is the fact that when the people would walk with God, God would be close to them, and when the people would not walk with God, or when they walked away from God, God just kind of basically said, fine, we'll do it your way. See what that does for you. How's that been working lately? And the people sometimes just go ahead for generations and have to live out the consequences of their sin. Now, I don't know if that's the way God works today. A lot of people would suggest that's exactly the way He works. Some people say, oh no, since Jesus has been around, He never goes ahead and works that way. But what I do know is the fact that Jesus came to forgive the sins of all. He came to touch the lives of those people who are close to God. He also came to touch the lives of those people who've taken the walk. Jesus goes and is around for all people. There's no definitive dividing line of them and us. That's a human characteristic. That's our human nature to say those people over there who don't go to church, or those people over there who don't have an understanding of God, those people over there are the ones who somehow will get God's judgment dumped upon them. But that's not necessarily the case. There's no promises that are made that we're the ones in the right understanding and all those other people are wrong. It just doesn't work that way. I think we have to approach that whole concept with a real careful understanding of what it means to walk with God faithfully. Not so much on our understanding of things, but perhaps maybe studying a little bit more about what He says and how we ought to live. And He doesn't give us a whole lot of difficulties to encounter. No, He gave the Israelites the Ten Commandments. He gave them basically an understanding of saying, look at people, I'll be your God, you be my people, and this is how this is going to go down. This is how we're going to go ahead and have this relationship. And I think in the process of that, somehow we've choked up. We don't want to be the ones who actually agree with God and say, okay, you have it your way. Instead, if you recall, the commandments are never seen in a positive light, but they're always seen as that stuff which we're not allowed to do. We're not allowed to go ahead and do those things because somehow they're morally wrong, and well, we can't tick God off, and therefore, we'll all sit around and grumble. But the commandments didn't have that purpose alone. They obviously were here to keep us in that whole understanding with God. When He says, I'll be your God, you be my people. Here's the boundaries. In other words, you put the fence around it and said, this is how you're going to live within that situational fence, as it were. But one of the things we need to realize is God never put a gate on that fence. He always left it a little bit open. We always could move in and out because we were given the gift of free will. Now, what do? How do we live? Lent is a good time to take to assess where we're at. Are we in that fence? Are we in that fence with other people? Are we outside the fence? Have we gone so far away that we just don't know what we're doing anymore, or why we're doing it, or how we're doing it? Have we drifted so far away that we simply can't even touch base with God or even feel close to Him? Do we think that our actions and activities have pushed us so far away from God that somehow we don't understand any more of that relationship, and we just feel, well, we're sinners, we're lost. Who wants to follow that rule book? Who wants to do those things? And as a result, then we just kind of quit. We just kind of sit down and say, well, it's enough for me, and I don't want to do any more. I don't know how we'll find ourselves or where we'll find it, but in that whole process, I know for myself, far too often, I question how far I've maybe walked away, chasing things that this world might offer, and realizing that, well, wait, I don't think that's what God had in mind. In the Old Testament, there's countless places that He gives simple advice. Do justice, love mercy, and keep that relationship with God in a holy way, and just simple, not overtly crazy, but we don't want to do that because our human nature drives us to want to be competitive with God, and it wants to keep us away from God. It's as though we're racing Him, and we have to win. And we'll do anything, including ignoring Him and cheating, in order to win. In order to do it our way, we walk away from His way. So perhaps Lent is a good time to just reflect on that, to sit back and say, well, am I walking in that path? Am I in that magical, mythical corral, as it were, that fenced-in area? Do I find myself there? And if I find myself there, do I sit in judgment about the guys that are there with me? Are we judgmental as opposed to loving and open? Are we mirroring the effects and work of the created ones that God has redeemed by His precious blood shed by Jesus at His suffering and death? Are we doing what Jesus is doing? Are we following? Are we keeping? Are we walking with Him? Are we staying close, or are we just lost down some rabbit hole that we've been chasing for decades? That's a good time for Lent to show up. It recalls and remembers for us. It's a time in which the church can go ahead and say, I need to look back. I need to look at my life. Where am I? How am I doing? Where am I going? Now, don't be shy. The answers aren't going to be pretty often. They're not always going to be nice. I know for myself, I think I should be in different places in different ways, in different forms and shapes, but it's just not. And as a result of that, I truly believe that God can use us as we are, where we are, if we just remember that relationship we have with Him is intact, that He sent His Son Jesus to die on the cross that we might have life and then have it abundantly. We're not penned in. We're not tied up or chained to any kind of behavior. God says, so who are you going to choose? Me or everything else? Not me. He gives us that opportunity. And sometimes we take it because we're the flashy, glimmery, shiny object club that comes every day and let's go get that instead. And I don't think that's what God would have us do. God calls us to be His people with both a command, hey, I'll be your God, you be my people, and a promise, because you're my people, I'll take care of you. And we need to be reminded of that. We also need to be reminded of what citizenship in God's kingdom looks like. Not judgmental, but full of love, acceptance, caring of other people, reaching out to others who are in need, touching the lives of those people around us who are in some way, shape, or form struggling. We don't know. We don't want to sit there and judgmental of everybody else and just not what God calls us to be. I would think that God invites us to to pick up more of the positive attributes. We look at the old glass half full methodology. First of all, I am thankful I have a glass, much less have full, or arguing about the fullness scale. Is it half full or half empty? I'm just thankful that God gives me a place at His table, and I would invite you to do the same. Just spend some time thinking this week about all of the things that God invites you to do. Don't let Lent be a series of having to give everything up, or a series of observances that perhaps maybe touch the heart or maybe they don't. Instead, take a focus, refocus, and maybe even a third refocus, if that's a word, on the relationship that God has given to us as He calls us to be His people, as He has saved us from our sins in Jesus, as He gives us the power of the Holy Spirit to walk every day. May your blessings go with you, and may God's grace rest upon you in all that you do. Hey, we're going to be heading off to Cuba in the months ahead, and when we get out to Cuba once again, we're going to be going ahead and taking things to our Cuban churches that are there. If you're interested in any way, shape, or form participating in that, please just drop me a line, and we'd be happy to talk details and work out ways in which we could touch the lives of the believers there who just don't have the resource perhaps that we do, and maybe we could make something click. So give me a buzz, write me an email. We'd be happy to talk about it. Be blessed in all that you do. Again, we're thankful that you join us, and may God keep you in His grace. Have a great week.